Next up, we have Ellis Settler, and he is joining us from Brunswick Glynn Joint Water Sewer, Georgia. It's kind of a mouthful there. We will learn how their 4-phase project has helped the organization realize more time to plan, less waste on employee resources, and reduce costs associated with emergency maintenance. So Ellis, if you're ready, I will let you take it from here.
All right. All right, welcome guys. I hope you're having a nice day. I just wanted to thank CityWorks for bringing me out and letting me present what we've been doing lately. And if you're ready, we're going to discuss our transformation to a quality asset management program with reliability optimization. So a little history for the joint water sewer. We are roughly servicing over 30,000 people, and we have all types of industry from, large industry to a very large port that does roll off for cars. We have 156 pump stations, and everything around here is flat. So we don't really have much elevation to work with, which has caused us to have more stations than I think you would in some places. We have 3 large treatment plants, as well as a handful of water facilities, wells, and things like that. The joint water sewer has been using CityWorks for a few years prior to our development now with our modern utility management system. And CityWorks was being used more as a digital logbook, a very expensive digital logbook for work orders. And we saw that data was lacking, the accountability was not there for follow through. And this was a point where the joint water sewer realized that it needed to devote resources and continued development and maintenance of the program. It also needed guidance from focused vendors who were specialized in developing effective utility maintenance and reliability optimization, and especially the CMMS portion, especially when we get to our hierarchies and things like that. In the early years, there was essentially no difference between us having a antiquated paper logbook and having a modern asset management program. So our starting goals, we wanted to make them simple. To get this underway and get it working effectively and quickly, we had to make everything simple. Just like any other program that wanted to start asset management, we wanted to make sure that we got out in front of projects and mitigate those critical failures rather than chasing around fires and doing small little fixes that were keeping things afloat, but not necessarily helping the asset run at a higher capacity and for longer periods of time. And our goal from that was to reduce labor cost, asset cost, and time spent reacting versus maintaining. The bottom line was we had to stop reacting and start maintaining. And that's kind of what our mission motto is for this whole thing. We needed to perform quality maintenance versus easy fixes like tightening down a flange bolt until it was 2 inches long and critically failed. We wanted to make sure that leaks were taken care of properly instead of just kind of throwing glue on it and seeing if it would work. There was a need to know the problems before they happened and where they might happen. Especially down here on the coast, we have a lot of issues with the salinity of the water. It causes a lot of problems with different materials, and knowing where those materials were or are would help us actually get to the point where we could maybe mitigate those or stop them from happening altogether. We also needed to improve the reliability of all of our assets so we didn't respond to the same problem over and over again. Now, to do this, we came up with a 4-phase approach to define our mission parameters. The first phase was to identify all assets, define the systems, define the subsystems, and get to the equipment. Our second phase was to develop the consequences and probability of failure and develop a true reliability-based optimization for all of those assets. The third phase was developing an engineered failure modes and effective cause analysis. And our fourth phase, which we're moving into now, is to define future protections of our assets. So with our phase one, we had to do a lot of work. This was probably the most time consuming of all four of all the phases that we've gone through at this point. We had to identify what's what, and which required considerable amount of on-time site to develop all of this in a comprehensive inventory of all the assets at a particular site. I'll use the wastewater treatment plant for most of my references here, just because that is where we started off, and it was one of the larger, high dollar targets that we need to get done quickly. So if you look at the spreadsheet that is on the screen right now, that is what we started off with when developing our asset inventory. It was the department, the location, the system, subsystem, and so on. We had to make sure we had CMMS tags and all types of information that would be put into GIS and then transferred over when we got our new hierarchy for CityWorks. So developing a vertical hierarchy was absolutely vital to our mission objectives. We had to move away from the linear thought of everything's just a pipe. When you get into pump stations and you get into the wastewater treatment plants, there's a lot of moving parts, and you really had to go to a vertical asset management approach to get everything, especially when using a CMMS system. So we started off with gathering those general major assets into a schema to get the ball rolling, and then we continued to refine that process and get into deeper workflows like you see here. This is one for our pump stations, and while we may not be at the end of this, we're working deeper down into it to develop an even more comprehensive format for our hierarchy. And like I said, the vertical hierarchy was just the obvious direction to go, and we were pushed that way by everybody, and we had no complaints about it. I think it was the best decision we could have made. So phase two is where we really started to dig into all of the data collection that we had done. We started getting into the subsystems and the equipment and developing their criticality by averaging their consequence and the probability of failures. So on the screen right now, you can see kind of our path to getting everything into CityWorks. It has our 4 phases. 1 and 2 were kind of independent, and then you can see in 3, everything starts coming together. We had to make sure that things like our operator rounds were copacetic with what they were actually doing, that the PM tasks were actually scheduled and working properly and getting what we needed done to the actual assets. And then we took all that information, put it into GIS, and transferred it into CityWorks. So after we figured out all that fun stuff and got all that data collected, we had to do more data. So for our PMs, our CMs, and our OMs, we had to come up with a way to set all that up. We averaged the consequence and probability of failure and developed a starting point to see which assets needed attention the most. And it provided us with a good jumping off point to develop our maintenance standards. We started off with, like everybody should, referencing the O&M manuals and getting a minimum standard for what should be done for these particular assets. And while we dug through that probability and consequences of failure, we were able to fine-tune the frequencies for particular assets, and it also provided us with a template for our reliability-based optimization. After creating the PMCMs and OMs, we went to that FEMCA, or the failure modes of effective analysis. And the benefit of having a FEMCA matrix is it helps streamline the repairs, but it can also help you recognize trends that are going on, and you can go into further investigations in certain areas or certain assets or types of assets that you have. So it helps you dig deeper into all of that, and when you may need to focus a little more of your time, capital, and effort. So now we have to utilize all that data. Once we got everything into our GIS system, we had to push it out to our CityWorks, to our CMMS system in CityWorks. So phase 3 was a culmination of all those collection efforts and the analysis and develop standards. So at this point, it was time to put everything from GIS into CityWorks and actually get this thing rolling. So with the help of our contractors and specialists, we implemented the new hierarchy and training staff in the new direction, which was one of the biggest parts of getting CityWorks to work as well as we wanted it to. After the hierarchy and work orders were given their frequencies and requirements based on the RVO, we started moving forward. All the effort that we put forward, you can see here. This is just a simple work order that we brought up for this in particular. Our goal, like I said earlier, was to keep everything simple. So we made sure that we set the recurrence dates and everything like that so that it would be taken care of for the future. We also went in and took the extra steps of adding things like instructions. If you use the instruction section in CityWorks, that's awesome on you because they're really good. We really like using them just because it helped out with the new process. Everybody could dig in, see what they were supposed to be doing, and make sure they actually followed step by steps. We use these rather than tasks to begin with, just to get people used to the system. But it's also great for people that are new to CityWorks, people that are covering shifts that may not be on that particular route on a regular basis, and for new hires. So the other big part of this was making sure that all of those tables and all of our GIS were pointed in the right direction. Making sure that the related tables and assets are set properly was paramount to getting out the good data that we need for our metrics. And that data is what drives your RVO and its adjustments. So almost 2 years in now to this big push that we started back in, back before the pandemic. We've had some pretty good results. Using Respond, I've put together these simple reference dashboards for our commissioners, superintendents, supervisors, crew chiefs, and so on, so they can get a quick peek at what we're doing and what's being done out in the field. They can see what we're doing as far as preventative work, planned work, etc. We made that transition from being a reactive organization in about mid-2020, despite the pandemic. And we are continuing to trend upwards. Our goal is to reach 80% in both categories, planned and preventative. I think that's pretty much a baseline for most utilities that have an asset management program. And we're well on our way. The last push there is going to be getting our planning and scheduling put together and the asset protections for the future. So phase 4, which we're moving into soon, will be asset protections for the future. So the next step is going to be implementing our planning and scheduling and training all of our divisions on the process. At this point, getting that started is going to be critical for us to get our 80% goals. We've kind of flattened out here around the 70% mark, just over 70%. And that last push to reach our goal will be getting planning and scheduling done. And CityWorks has been instrumental in getting us to the point we are right now by making sure that work orders are created and assigned promptly and easily. Implementing the RVO task report is going to be another step that we go through. It will actually help us, maintain our assets to a higher degree and to a higher standard than just the normal PMC and NUM standards. So we'll be able to run reports, see what's happened, and redirect our process to better address the issues that are at hand. On the screen right now, you can kind of see one of our condition-based maintenance matrices. Or matrices. This just gives you an idea of when something should happen, how long it should take, how much labor should be put towards it, and what you're supposed to do. And that's going to make sure that everything's done exactly the same every time that we do it. And in the smaller window there, we're going to utilize Projects 365 to begin with our planning and scheduling. Right now, it's just what fits for us. But every organization is going to have a different need or different ability that they may be able to use a different type of program. Our goal here is to use 365 to show the validity of the planning and scheduling so that we can get a standalone program that hopefully will work with CityWorks. So, yeah, with all that, I'd like to thank you for joining us today.